All right, guys, welcome to the state of the franchise. We're going to be doing Texans and then Bengals here. So, let's hop in. Texans traded away their most of their really good players. So let's start with the draft picks because that's where this is most important. They've got 2, 10, 31, 1 second, 2/3, 2/4, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh. So 2 picks in the top 10. Sam and I talked about this on an early podcast. If he did end up with 2 top 5 or 2 top 10 picks, that's a great trade for him. So, yeah, awesome move there, Lucha. I doubted it a little bit. I thought the Bears were going to be a little bit better, and they started off hot, but kind of finished really weak. So, worked out really well. So let's look. They've got Desmond Riddler. He had a pretty good season for a really bad rookie. 6-5. He rushed for another 403-5. I think he must have gotten hurt a lot, and he must have ended up playing Mikael Cunningham. 9-7, still really good. Another 432, but no rushing touchdowns. You're probably going to have to ride with these two guys for at least another year, but I think they're good enough that you could win some games. Running back is a mess. Duke Johnson should be used strictly as a receiving back, so this could be a spot where you look in the draft or in free agency if there are any out there. David Johnson is washed up. Elijah Mitchell, fine. Definitely gotta move on here from these guys. Find somebody. Fullback, that's fine. Nico Collins is a pretty good receiver. He's got star dev. Didn't score any touchdowns, only 440 yards. You had Brandon Cooks kind of have a really nice season for you here in Texas or in Houston. 965 and 8 touchdowns. So you don't have to worry too much about the receiving core. You could add another guy if you feel with one of those top 10 picks to really, because I think there are a few guys who are early first round who I think could have dev, but if the draft and Doug has shown me anything is don't expect dev from these guys at the top of the first 3 picks, and I want to say 7 of the first 8 all had normal dev. So, tight end is a dumpster fire. I haven't scouted any tight ends, so I don't know if there are any at the top, but that's a potential number 10 pick. I wouldn't take a tight end at 2. I think only one in NFL GM history has gone top 5, and it was a number 1 pick. There's been a few top 7, top 8, 6 through 8, towards the end of NFL GM. But yeah, you can't do it with number 2. But number 10, if there's a guy, take him. You've got Tunsil, so you don't have to worry about the offensive line at the left tackle spot. Sharping is fine. Martin's fine. Fulton is old, so you might want to look to replace him. Titus Howard is okay. He's young, so you could keep him around. He's not terrible. Hubbard is good. He's getting up there. Omenahu from Texas isn't bad as a backup. Blacklock isn't bad. So really you could do worse than these guys on the offensive or defensive line. Rankins, that's still a really good pickup for the Texans. So, you don't have to worry about the front 3. You might need a better backup, but Rankins, Blacklock, and Hubbard are fine, and Omenahu can rotate in with those guys. Jacob Martin is a guy you probably need to move on from him. You've got McKinney and Cunningham, so you're set in the middle linebacker spot. But you definitely need to address this outside linebacker spot. If there's a guy 31-10, one of your second round pick, you should look to take him. And this is another spot. You've got Campbell, who's really good. Star dev, but Roby's old, so he's just going to continue to regress. Lonnie Johnson's just a guy. He's a decent 4th or 5th corner. these guys are no one. So this is another spot where if there's a guy, you have to take him in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Justin Reed is amazing, and he's a guy who, if he can get superstar dev in this year or next year, he could be really good for the Texans. Kevin Calhoun, he must be a legacy player because I don't know him, so. But he had a decent year. So, I mean, the safety spots are locked up pretty well. This corner, linebacker, tight end, and running back are your main concerns here, Luch. Like, they're guys who you don't have to have a great running back to be good. Look at Mostert's not fantastic as an overall rating, but Duke doesn't bring a lot to the table in the running game. You're not going to lean on him heavily. So yeah, and like I said, you've got the draft picks to go out and fill a lot of these holes. This Texans team outside of quarterback could be pretty dangerous next season. So, if you have any questions, go ahead, throw them in the Slack or in the chat. Yeah, sorry about that, Luch. I have a draft going on at the same time. All right, doesn't look like there's any questions. I'm going to pop over and look at that draft real quick. Sorry, guys. And then I'll come back and do Bengals. Let's see where we are, because I'm pretty sure we're just like midway through the... Yeah, I've got plenty of time. So moving on to the Bengals, probably the most disappointing. Oh, anyone I would trade off your current team? That's tough. You could make the case that you should trade Cooks, because I don't think he matches with your timeline. Like, even I think you could be improved this season, but I don't know that you are going to be improved enough that Cooks isn't going to regress before you do, and I don't think his trade value is going to be higher than it is right now. You just signed Rankin, so you can't trade him unless you want, and same with Reed. So honestly, like, maybe Tunsil, he's another guy who's kind of old, and I want to look, but I don't, even like good left tackles still give up like 13 sacks. They're just going to give up sacks. So I would say Cooks and Tunsil would be the two guys who I would consider trading. Maybe McKinney if you like a team really needs a middle linebacker, but otherwise, I think that your guys all kind of fit into your timeline. Roby's not going to get you much, but he could fetch a mid to late round pick. But, there's not a lot of guys on your team that I would really consider moving. Like, Reed would have been one of them, but you just re-signed him. And Rankins, you couldn't have traded him this season because you just signed him. And then you signed him to an extension, which I think is smart. I like Rankins, and I think he's a guy who will perform despite his overall. So moving on to the Bengals, and like I said,